The Federal Reserve seemed to have just made a decision that contradicts everything that they have publicly said they stand for. And we got to talk about it because inflation has ticked back up to around 3.8%, which is around 90% above the target that they've been chasing for years. And the labor market is softening. Growth is being revised lower. And while all of that is happening, the same Federal Reserve is still planning to cut interest rates this year anyway. That's what it seems to be. Let's see what happens. But three separate signals are all pointing in completely different directions. But most of those people look at those numbers in isolation and shrug because the financial press reports them like they have nothing to do with each other. When you line them up next to each other, the Fed has seemed to be signaling something significant about what they're actually doing without really even saying a word. So what they're telling you affects every single dollar that you currently hold, every dollar that you've spent decades earning, and every dollar you are planning to retire on. So I need to walk you through what the Fed is really doing and why they can't do anything else and what it means for your money in real time and where the wealth class is repositioning while ordinary people are still being told everything is fine. I'm Camila Stevenson, and around here we talk wealth. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you have not already. I'm going to continue to let you know what the deal is and what I'm researching and finding underneath the rugs. And, some stuff is just not plain in sight, but I really try to dig and, get that information to you. I do want to say this is not financial advice. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Do your own research and drop in the chat. Are you noticing that gas and food prices are going up? I know I am. When I pulled up to the gas station, I had to pay $6.50 for gas. And then I bought groceries that seemed like it could have been about $120 years ago, but it cost me $700. It's getting crazy out here. Now I want to get into it. All right. I want to walk you through what is happening so you can see it the way the Fed wishes you would not see it. And I'm not the Fed. Okay. So whatever they do, I just want to be positioned to benefit. And I want you to be positioned to benefit. But let's know what's happening first. So the Federal Reserve's preferred measure of inflation is called core PCE. Now, in plain language, that is the most accurate measure that they have of how fast prices are rising across the economy. The Fed has publicly committed for years to a target of 2%. Now, the most recent reading came in at 3.8%, up from 3.2%, I believe. So that means inflation is running about 90%, like I said, above where the Fed has said it needs to be. And we just got a Fed shift, by the way. This is just standard of what they've wanted the interest rates to be and what they want inflation to be. And also this includes our White House currently and what they desire. Okay. Now, at the same time as inflation running high, the labor market is softening. Okay, so wage growth has slowed. GDP growth for this year is being revised lower. So the economy is slowing while prices are still rising faster than the Fed says they should be. Now, here's the part that should make you think. Despite all of that, the Fed has still penciled in rate cuts for the rest of the year. That is a contradiction because if you're serious about fighting inflation, you do not cut rates while inflation is going up. You raise them. The Fed is doing the exact opposite of what their stated mission would require, and they're doing it openly. And that's what at least they're signaling. We'll see what happens because, again, they should be raising rates, which either way, it's going to be a problem. Now, why are they signaling that they may be lowering rates? Well, the answer is something economists call fiscal dominance. So in plain language, the Fed's job of fighting inflation has been overridden by the federal government's job of paying its own debt. So here's the math. The United States is now sitting on over somewhere around $39 trillion in national debt. Some people say 35 trillion. I think it's more like 39 trillion. The interest expense alone on that debt is approaching $1 trillion per year. So every additional percentage point on the average interest rates adds hundreds of billions of dollars to that interest bill annually. If the Fed kept rates high enough to fight inflation properly, the federal government literally could not afford to pay the interest on its own debt. So the numbers just don't work. So the Fed has been cornered. They cannot necessarily raise rates when inflation requires it, but raising rates would create a debt service crisis for the government they answer to. So they are doing the only thing that's left available to them, it seems, and that is they're projecting to cut rates while inflation runs above target and quietly accepting that the value of every dollar you're holding is going to be sacrificed in the process. They cannot say this out loud because the political consequences would be huge for that. But they have shown you with their actions exactly what their decisions are. And so the Fed is no longer fighting inflation. They're managing the federal debt arithmetic at the expense of the dollar's purchasing power. And I think the way they're going to spin it is by saying, hey, they shouldn't have to manage all. They shouldn't have to deal with the inflation and deal with the interest rates. They should leave it up to, Congress and to deal with the debt and the taxes and all of that. They shouldn't be left to have to deal with, the problem with debt and overspending, spending more than what the country is bringing in. And so they really just want to focus on interest rates and not kind of tie the two together because they feel like that shouldn't be their full job. At least that's probably how they're going to spend it. We'll see. But I need to explain to you what this means for your money and where the wealth class is going. Okay. When the Fed cuts rates while inflation stays above target, your money is being repriced lower every single day. So the number in your bank account may stay the same or even go up, but the purchasing power that number represents gets smaller and smaller. A dollar today buys you less than a dollar bought last year. The same dollar will buy you even less next year and even less the year after. And the Fed just signaled and told you with their actions that this is the policy going forward for the foreseeable future. That's what it looks like. Even if it's not short term, even if they decide to raise rates or whatever, long term, this is what's going to happen. And, the value of your dollar, again, is going to keep getting compressed because the federal government cannot afford the alternative. So this hits ordinary people the hardest because most of the wealth held by everyday Americans sit in dollar denominated instruments. Checking accounts paying you almost nothing, savings accounts paying you less than inflation, certificates of deposit, money market funds, bonds, pension plans that pay out in fixed dollar amounts, social security payments that adjust too slowly to keep up. Every one of those is being silently devalued while you watch the number on the statement stay the same. 10 years of inflation running above target eats roughly a third of your purchasing power. Most people will look up in 2035 wondering what happened to the savings they spent decades building, and the answer will already be behind them. You better pay attention to what's happening, especially with the Strait of Hormuz. It's going to get worse. So the wealth class, they understand all of this, and they have been quietly repositioning for years. And that is why central banks around the world are buying gold at the fastest pace in modern history. It is why silver is having its strongest run in decades. It's why income generating real estate has been bid up aggressively. And it's why digital assets that cannot be inflated by any government, like Bitcoin and XRP, are being accumulated by major institutions in volumes that are not yet visible to retail investors. And this is exactly where XRP fits into the bigger picture in a way most people don't see. XRP is not a dollar. It is a fixed supply that cannot be expanded by central bank decision. It cannot be debased to pay down anyone's debt. It is neutral, which means no single country controls it, and the institutional infrastructure being built on the XRP ledger is positioning it as the settlement layer for a global financial system that is increasingly moving away from the dollar as the default reserve currency. But when the Fed cuts rates to manage the debt and the dollar keeps losing purchasing power, the assets that benefit the most are the ones that cannot be debased and that have real institutional demand building around them. XRP sits in that category alongside gold and silver, and the wealth class has already noticed. This does not mean that we won't have pullbacks. I'm hoping for a pullback for gold, silver, XRP, digital commodities, all of it. But we'll see what happens, because if it is a pullback, then I will be buying. And that's what smart money will be doing as well. And if it just inflates away, then we're going to ride the wave with it, right? So I need you to understand this, that if the Fed is cutting rates while inflation runs above target and your dollars are being repriced lower every single year, then you need to figure out what you're going to be doing to protect the purchasing power that you've been spending years building. Keeping your wealth in a bank account paying you almost nothing while inflation eats 3% a year is not preservation. It is slow erosion that compounds in the wrong direction. 10 years of that adds up to, again, a third of your wealth disappearing without you ever even paying attention. So most people are doing nothing about this because they can't see the erosion happening in real time. The wealth class is doing the opposite. They are moving capital out of dollars and into assets that hold value independent of what any central bank does. And they're putting those assets inside tax protected vehicles that compound on top of that protection. That second part is the move that most retail is not thinking about. And it might be the single most important decision that you can make this decade. And this is why I personally moved a portion of my wealth into a Roth IRA through I Trust Capital. A Roth IRA is one of the only structures left in the American tax code that is genuinely designed for long-term preservation across decades. The way it works is very simple. You pay the taxes upfront when the money goes in, and after that, the IRS never touches the appreciation again for the rest of your life. When the dollar continues to lose purchasing power and the asset inside the account compound across multiple decades, every dollar of growth stays yours. None of it gets returned to the same government whose policies are causing the erosion in the first place. I Trust Capital opened the door to holding real native XRP inside that retirement structure, along with gold and silver and other digital assets in the same account. That combination gives you a hedge against the dollar's erosion that compounds inside a vehicle the government cannot tax on the way out. There's also a $100 funding bonus when you fund the account, and the link is in the description. And if you also want a customized plan for your specific situation and timeline and how to structure your wealth across all of these assets, that's what my one-on-one clarity calls are for. We sit down, we look at your accounts, we map out what needs to move and in what order, so nothing falls through the cracks. We look at your structure, your LLC, your estate, and we get you to have some real clarity about where you're moving forward. And we do this because it's very hard if you don't have a clear picture of where you're headed. It's hard to now reverse engineer back and do the right steps to get there if you don't have a there in place. Okay. And if you're not clear on that there, you get what I'm saying? So you're going to walk away with a real written plan instead of, again, keeping everything in your head and everything is theoretical and unclear and gray, right? We give you clarity on those calls. And then also I have my community. It's open for ongoing weekly support. We're building together live coaching sessions, trainings, and everything you need really to start mapping out your financial future. It is amazing what we're doing in that community. Now that you understand what the Fed is actually doing, what is the one move you're going to make this month to protect your purchasing power? Are you going to buy more silver? Are you going to fund your Roth IRA, buy more XRP? I just want to see what you are doing and how you're positioning yourself. Do share, because people read the comments and they're really inspired by what other people are doing. It just makes so much easier when you're moving in the same direction as a community. I want you to like the video if it added value, subscribe if you have not already, hype it if you're feeling extra kind, and know that I'll keep you updated on what is ahead. I really want all of us to win because there's so much opportunity, and it really doesn't matter which direction the Fed goes in at the end of the day. We are going to be positioned for the wealth transfer. And I declare that over you and your life. And as always, I want you to stay wise, stay wealthy, and I'll see you in the next video.